Hello, I'm Lori Olson, and I'm the author of How to Be a Caregiver for an Aging Parent with Dementia While Maintaining Dignity and Sanity, for both you and the carer. Now, in previous videos, we talked about how important it is for the caregiver to, first of all, take care of self. Because if you're not taking care of yourself, well, the ship's in trouble. You're the captain, you're plotting the course, and you're in charge of making all systems function well. That's a big responsibility. And it's quite honestly unfortunate if you're the sole provider, or feel that you're the sole provider for your loved one. And that may be even if you have family members who are just not cooperating. And that really stinks. And that just adds a lot of emotional pain to the equation. But if that's your situation, or if you are truly alone because there's no extended family, there's still ways to solve that you're not completely isolated. And so what we need to understand as square one we talked about was that self-awareness, understanding what your emotions are. So you can use that as a clue to what's the problem here, what needs to be done, because your emotions are very charged messages that are getting your attention. They're wake-up calls for you, saying, pay attention. There's something going on here that needs to be addressed. And when you ignore your emotions, or you try to manage them, push them away, they become more intense. They're intense and furious, and they want to get your attention because there's a problem that needs to be solved. So in the previous video, we talked about being self-aware, looking at your emotions in a very neutral, interested perspective, not judging yourself, not driving home that emotion even stronger and stronger to create more and more physical discomfort and emotional distress for you, but taking away that charge from those emotions. And that's a good thing to do, to be a curious spectator and say, what's the problem here? Well, now that you've identified possibly the problem, that could be, well, you name it, and your emotion, you kind of tame it, you identify it, and it starts leading you down the path of discovery. Now, what's the first place that I would say that's very common, most common for caregivers to need to discover? And what they'll discover is that there's a great deal of grief. There's a great deal of grief and loss for the parent, the person that you had in your life. Especially true if that was a very good and caring and nurturing relationship, and you see that person slipping away and then suddenly becoming the person that you enjoyed to a person who may be seen as an enormous burden. But it's also true if you've had a terrible relationship with your parent and with unresolved hurts. You have unresolved hurts, and now you try to resolve them, and you have to suddenly be the caregiver, and a good caregiver, for a person that maybe you don't like very much and maybe have never really liked very much. Well, I'm going to tell you that there's still an opportunity for you here to put things in a way that is very beneficial to you and to the relationship with your carer, even despite all those things. But those are real feelings, and you need to address them. And that feeling is the feeling of grief, loss, whether it was good or bad, because you're grieving the loss of a relationship that you had, or grief of the loss of a relationship that now you know you never have. And those both stink. Those absolutely stink. So that's an acceptance part. That's an understanding that first emotion. We talk about understanding emotions and accepting. That's a very, very important one that you need to address and look at and realize that you're going through a grieving process and there's a sense of loss. So how does one deal with that? Well, you do it by acknowledging it and not pushing it away, because you're going through a grieving process. It's as if that person that you knew has died, or is slow death, actually. It's called the long goodbye. It goes on and on. They're slipping away from you. And it can be very painful as you see that slipping. And especially when you're still trying to hang on to that person as they were. And I would have proposed to you that a different way of looking at it, and maybe a better way, an adjusting way to look at it, is that this is just a different part of that journey, and that it's more on the acceptance end of it. You get past the initial shock of the diagnosis, and then you start seeing the person slip away. You have to reframe it and redefine it as what your relationship with this person is. It's going to take on a different structure. You can still have emotional joy, laughing, lessons to be learned from a parent with dementia. Believe me, there are plenty of lessons to learn from them, their wisdom. But you have to be open. And so this next step of self-awareness and acknowledging your emotions is to be open to seeing things in a different way. So seeing things in a different way is the next part of your curious, interested, problem-solving attitude that you need to take. Being open to saying, yes, what I had was then, and I'm having something with this person who's still very real for me, and how is this going to shape up? And how will it move on so that when I look back at this point in time, that these memories have added to our story, our journey in a positive way, and that you as a caregiver will be forged in fire. Yes, I know, it's forging in fire, but you have the choice to be forged in fire, to be ever so much wiser, and that can be the outcome of this very, very difficult journey you're on. Or it can also, versus being so fragile and ill-equipped that it becomes that you're torched. You're torched by the whole affair. So we don't want you to be torched. We want, even though it's hard, for you to move through this process of being forged in fire and finding more wisdom and more meaning, and by reframing your relationship, which is still very real. They're here. Very real. It's just going to be reframed in a different way. So it's accepting that this happened, and recognize that your memories of that person, to varying degrees, is still there. I mean, their temperament, their certain memories will crop up, and be a different way of exploring who this person is and what that means for you. But this starts with that acceptance of that point. So acknowledge your emotions is one thing. Acknowledge your anger, your resentments, and so forth. And peel the onion back and start with more openness to accepting what exists. Those feelings will help you lead to problem solving, and that problem solving starts by being open. And being open, the square one for dementia caregivers is saying, yeah, my relationship is now different. Let's find out what this is all about. More about communicating with the family members, especially the difficult ones, in the next video.